Most men think they're being loved, but in reality, they're being cast, not as themselves, but as a character in someone else's fantasy. She doesn't fall for you. She falls for who she thinks you could become, for the version of you that fits her private script. And the moment you stop fitting that script, the applause dies, the affection fades. Not because you changed, but because you failed to play the role she invented in her mind. This isn't new. It's been happening for centuries. Not on battlefields, but in bedrooms. Not through orders, but through subtle expectations, projections, illusions. And here's the brutal truth. It's not her fault if you volunteered to play the fool. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He knew real power isn't just about leading armies. It's about leading yourself. Seeing through appearances, resisting the urge to be flattered into submission. Today, we'll expose how this game is played on you, how projection makes you a prisoner, and how the only path to freedom isn't through anger, but through ruthless self-clarity. If you stay until the end, you'll walk away with a lens that most men will never have, a lens that protects your mind, your peace, your power. Because once you stop being a character in her story, you start writing your own. 1. How to spot when a woman sees you as a fantasy, not as a man. Let's start with the real reason most men get hurt. When a woman shows interest, you think, she sees me. But in truth, she sees the version of you she wants to believe in, not the real you, the man you could become in her mind. That's why, at the start, everything feels perfect. You think you're connecting, but really, she's filling in the blanks with her own fantasy. This is not always done on purpose, but it's still dangerous for you. Because every minute you spend trying to match her expectations, you lose yourself. Machiavelli would tell you, if you let others shape your image, you give them power over your life. In simple terms, if you don't define who you are, someone else will, and you'll pay the price. Now here's what you must do to protect yourself. The moment a woman puts you on a pedestal, slow down. Do not get excited. Do not rush into proving her right. Instead, stay grounded and take control of the frame. How? Simple. Start asking her questions that show you're not here to be her perfect man. For example, what do you think makes a relationship truly last? Have you ever realized you were wrong about someone? What did you learn? These questions force her to step out of the fantasy. They bring her back to reality. They show her, you're not here to play a role. You're here to be respected. A man who does this doesn't become less attractive. He becomes untouchable. Because he shows her, I won't change myself just to fit your dream. That's real power. That's how you stop being used as a character in someone else's story. 2. Stop being her emotional crutch. Build your own emotional independence. Here's where most men get trapped. They think that being needed means being loved. Every time she has a problem, you rush to fix it. You help, you support, you rescue. It feels good, right? You feel important, useful, connected. But here's the hidden truth. You're not building love. You're building dependency. Step by step, you're becoming her emotional crutch, and that crutch becomes a leash. In real life, it looks like this. You're always the one calming her down. You get blamed for not being there when you take space. Her bad mood somehow always becomes your fault. Little by little, you stop living for yourself. You start living to manage her emotions. Machiavelli would call this voluntary servitude. He warned us, A man who gives too much of himself becomes easier to rule. Translation: if you always say yes, don't be surprised when you're treated like a servant. Now here's exactly how you break free. Start small. Say no to the little things. The "can you do this for me" that isn't urgent. The "stay on the phone when you're busy." The "why didn't you reply faster" guilt trip. When you say no calmly without anger, you build something powerful. Self-respect. Every time you refuse unnecessary demands, you remind her and yourself, "My peace is not for sale." And here's what happens. You stop being easy to control. She starts respecting your space. You regain control over your time, your mind, your energy. A man who can say no with calm authority is a man who becomes untouchable. 3. Validation is a trap. Here's how high-value men reclaim respect. Let's be honest. You've been trained to perform for approval. At school, at work, in dating, it's always the same game. Be liked, be chosen, be approved. But there's a harsh reality nobody tells you. A woman can be obsessed with you without even knowing who you really are. She's not in love with you. She's in love with how you make her feel. And when that feeling changes, so does her loyalty. Weak men ignore this. They beg for constant reassurance. They adjust, overthink, apologize, just to stay in her good graces. But high-value men, they don't chase feelings. They chase truth. Machiavelli would say, "The wise man trusts facts, not flattery." If you live for validation, you'll live in chains. Here's the exact move you need to make. Next time you feel the urge to seek her approval, stop. Take 10 seconds. Ask yourself, is she valuing me or the feeling I provide? Be honest. If it's just emotional entertainment, disengage. Don't react. Don't explain. Redirect your energy where it's earned. Your mission. Your growth. People who value authenticity. Every time you refuse to beg for validation, you build something more important than attraction. Respect. And a man who doesn't depend on approval becomes untouchable. 4. Stop playing roles you never chose. Take back control of your identity. Here's a trap most men don't even see. They think they're choosing a woman. But in reality, they're being chosen to play a part. Not as themselves, but as the fixer, the savior, the perfect boyfriend who checks all her invisible boxes. And because they don't want to disappoint, they shrink, they adjust, they fit into a role they never agreed to. But every time you accept a role that doesn't match who you are, you betray yourself, quietly, slowly, until you forget where the performance ends and where you begin. Machiavelli would tell you this. The wise man defines his role. The fool lets others define it for him. So here's a practical move to stay in control. Before you take on emotional responsibility, ask sharp, simple questions. What do you actually expect from me? What role are you hoping I'll play? Pay attention to the answer, or the lack of it. If she's vague, if she avoids clarity, that's your signal to step back. Because unclear expectations always lead to hidden demands. Remember, a man who defines his own role can never be trapped in someone else's fantasy. 5. Why trying to please her kills. Attraction. And how to stay irresistible. Most men get this wrong from the start. The more you try to fit her expectations, the faster she loses interest. Why? Because women aren't attracted to men who adapt to their every mood. They're attracted to men who stay rooted. Men who are calm, clear, and unbendable. Every time you adjust yourself to avoid rejection, you lose a piece of what made you attractive in the first place. Machiavelli would call this a loss of sovereignty. He who seeks approval trades his power for comfort. But comfort doesn't attract desire. Strength does. Here's your actionable shift. Next time she tests you with tricky questions, don't answer to please. Answer to reveal your truth. Even a simple, "That's not how I see it, but I respect your view," is enough to show you're not here to perform. Because in the end, the man who speaks his mind calmly, without fear, becomes rare. And rarity sustains attraction, not obedience. 6. Escape the nice guy trap. Become the man she respects and can't control. Most men don't live as men. They live as masks, smiling when they're tired, agreeing when they disagree, nodding just to keep the peace. But that's not strength. That's fear disguised as politeness. Machiavelli warned of this exact trap. A prince who tries to please everyone ends up respected by no one. In modern terms, a man who hides his truth to avoid conflict slowly loses himself. There's only one way out of this loop: self-confrontation. Not for validation, not to impress, but to finally know who you are, without applause. Yes, it's brutal. Yes, it's lonely. But it's the only way to build an identity that doesn't collapse when love, attention, or praise fades. Here's a precise commitment for you. This week, take 1 hour. No phone, no notifications, no outside opinions. Just sit with yourself. Ask the questions that matter. Who am I without applause? What do I value if no one is watching? Because a man who finds those answers becomes sovereign. And a sovereign man, he isn't loved for the roles he plays. He's respected for the presence he embodies. If you've made it this far, you're already doing what most men will never dare. You've chosen truth over distraction. You've decided to see reality as it is, not as it's sold to you. That alone makes you different. Most will stay asleep, chasing attention, begging for approval, performing like trained actors, desperate for applause that never lasts. But you're stepping into a different arena. An arena where your worth isn't voted by others, it's declared by you. From this moment forward, you are no longer a product to be chosen. You are the one who chooses. Not out of arrogance, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, out of alignment with who you truly are. Machiavelli would tell you, a ruler who depends on the love of his subjects will be ruled by their whims. In other words, a man who builds his identity on external approval will be tossed around like a leaf in the wind. But a man who stands still, who anchors himself in his own values, becomes the one who bends reality around him. You're not here to be a leaf. You're here to be the tree, rooted, grounded, unshakable. From now on, you stop adjusting yourself to fit in. You stop explaining yourself to be liked. You stop chasing the people who only see their reflection in you. You choose alignment over attention. You choose standards over validation. You choose peace over performance. And something powerful happens when you do. The right people, the rare ones, will start to adjust to your frequency. Not the other way around. That's not coldness. That's sovereignty. And sovereignty is the highest form of power. Remember this. A lion doesn't need to convince sheep to respect him. His presence does the work. Today, you've begun the work of becoming that lion. Not through noise, but but through calm, relentless self-respect. Now go, not to chase more, but to be more. Because the man who no longer begs to be chosen is the man the world cannot ignore. One last message for those who truly want to change their life. For those who are ready to detach from the 99% and play a different game. What I'm working on will change the way women see you and the way you see yourself. It's coming soon, so stay tuned. If this spoke to you, don't just keep it in your head. Write a comment, even just a few words. It helps you remember, and it might help someone else too. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this content, and share this with someone who, in your eyes, needs it right now. Just trust your instinct. We're all trying to get clearer, more solid inside. So let's build minds that don't break.